It's board game news! This week in board game news, we have, oh look, I found this puzzle piece! Here is your puzzle piece. I know that half of you just came for the puzzle piece, but stick around, we do a pretty good news segment. Asmodee, you know, the company that owns everything, has announced that they formed a new company called Asmodee Entertainment, which will focus on producing TV shows, movies, maybe even computer games based on their intellectual properties. This is very exciting. Just imagine a movie based on Pandemic, or perhaps a computer game based on Time Stories, or even a TV show based on the cult board game Game of Thrones. It surely is impressive, and I wish Asmodee the best of success, although I'm feeling a little bit cautious because this might just be perhaps over ambitious. I can't help but be reminded of the whole Sierra Games debacle in the 90s, which was also a company in a large new burgeoning industry, also a company owned by a large investment group, and also a company pouring seemingly endless amounts of money into acquisitions and projects that were just overly grandiose, and effectively the money ran out and the projects got out of control and the company doesn't exist anymore. Now look, I'm not prophesizing doom. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen to Asmodee. I'm just saying anything could happen, and perhaps, you know, if even if Asmodee somehow goes down, which I don't think they will, because they're led by people who have a good head on their shoulders and savvy and don't take unnecessary risks, but even if they do, someone else will step in and take over. What I am saying is that this is a good time to invest in a trained Labrador, because someone is going to have to play Sparky in that Dead of Winter movie. Catan is entering the realm of virtual reality, finally giving you the chance to play the game with disembodied heads. Is this hell? Look, I know the Pope just announced that hell doesn't exist anymore, but I don't think he's seen this yet. For a brief moment, The Mind has taken Board Game Geek's website by storm. A game that features all but 100 cards numbered from 1 to 100, and that's it, and plus some extra cards with spectral bunnies and shuriken. Largely fueled by Board Game Geek team's infatuation with this game, the further is a hard word to say. Further isn't surprising because The Mind asks you to make decisions without having any information about those decisions, and the only way to get that information is to look into your silent partner's eyes and telepathically extract it. And you know what? According to the people that have played it, it works! And whilst The Mind is only available in Germany at the moment, I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to hit very wide distribution very soon. Personally, I'm more looking forward to the sequel, where you look into your partner's eyes and telepathically force them to stand up and make you a cup of tea without asking. Uwe Rosenberg is still on his eternal quest to make farming a touch more interesting and a lot more idealized than in real life. This time, in Reichhold, he is taking us to Iceland and essentially asking us to grow tomatoes and veg on an island largely composed of igneous rock. The idea is that this is such a bizarre venture that it is bound to attract tourists, somehow equaling profit. It reminds me of that time I opened up an ice cream stand in the Sahara Desert. Joking aside, if Uwe is making this game, I'm sure the theme has some real-world grounding. And long-time Uwe fans might or might not be pleased to hear that this is a re-implementation of his older game At the Gates of Loyang. And those component-obsessed might be pleased to hear that there will be a lot of wooden vegetables. I'm just glad I don't have to play another bad take on Patchwork. Too harsh, I know. Our Kickstarter pick for this week is Imperius, coming from designer Grant Rodiak, who is responsible for Cry Havoc. And Imperius is a card drafting game, lightish card drafting game, promising a lot of tactical depth, and I love card drafting games. Plus, this one features the twist of, do I draft my own cards, which I can then deploy and use, or do I draft my opponent's cards, which I can't use, but I can control where they are positioned, which I think is very clever. I mean, maybe very clever. It's a Kickstarter, so as always, we can at best recommend to be cautiously optimistic. Although it's really hard to be anything less than cautiously optimistic, because this one features the artwork of the entire cast of Babylon 5. They made Londo look really good. In this week's celebrity segment, where we invite a celebrity to discuss this week's board game news in an entirely yet again redecorated interview balcony, we have, wow, Willem Dafoe! I'm personally a very big fan, but Willem, you come across in your roles as a very intense person. Are you also very intense when you play board games?
My face, you know, sometimes, you know, my face is naturally expressive. Sometimes I almost have to tame it, because if I let it go, it can go from sweet to grotesque, you know, like a sports car.
Yep, I think I pretty much walked into that answer. By the way, don't forget, we have a Kickstarter running for not just this news segment. We do reviews if you've not seen them. They're very good. Check them out. And if you like them, please back a Kickstarter. We very, very much need your support. That's it for this week's news. Tune in again next week.